So I feel like this is a good story to talk about in following up with the Joe Rogan podcast. And typically, the videos I produce on my main channel are more structured, more produced, go over various sources and facts, and hit more to a larger point. However, in order to make this trip possible, I have been working extremely, extremely hard, and so I just want to, I think what we'll do is we'll follow up with some of the latest news on Twitter, and I think it works. So the story we have from BuzzFeed, I think, is particularly important. I did briefly mention it on the Joe Rogan podcast. Twitter is about to be questioned about political bias by India's nationalist government. The company is denying it. Twitter says that it doesn't let users' political ideologies influence its policies 3 days before being questioned by a parliamentary committee in India. It's just mind-blowing how big of a lie that is. Like, sure, maybe these Twitter employees are experiencing extreme cognitive dissonance, or they just really don't understand the world around them. One of the points I brought up on Joe's show is that they're in this bubble. They're in a bubble in Silicon Valley, and they write these rules thinking they're the majority and what they're talking about is right and just, not realizing they're extremely biased. Okay? I often say this to people. It's probably on the show with Joe, but we're going to go over a lot of these ideas right now. Listen, Twitter is biased. Facebook is biased. Plain and simple. We don't have to talk about who got banned, the unjust, the imbalance in how people are banned. All we can simply do is take a look at Twitter's terms of service. For one, hate speech is not something conservatives think should be banned. Therefore, if Twitter decides that hate speech is a bannable offense, that's only a faction of the left, not even the entirety of the left, okay? There are a lot of people I know, disaffected liberals, right? These are a lot of the people who are considered, they smear these people as alt-right, but there are so many people who are former Bernie supporters, disaffected liberals, who do not agree with banning hate speech. This is what really blows my mind, okay? And I wish I would have brought this up on the podcast. Futurama. I love Futurama. There's an episode of Futurama where Zoidberg eats the Earthican flag, okay? Maybe you're not a fan of the show, but essentially Futurama, it's made by Matt Groening. It's, the guy who made The Simpsons. The Earthican flag, it's the American flag, and say Earthican because it's a one-world, government. Zoidberg, on Freedom Day, eats the flag to make a point that he has the right to express himself by eating the flag, and that's something that free speech allows. Well, everyone gets angry, and they throw him under the bus. A war breaks out between him and his country, and it's complicated, but the point is, in that show, there's an old man who holds all these horrible, disgusting views. He's a polygamist, he believes all these terrible things, and everyone keeps booing him. That's the point. He says, I disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. What happened to the group that believes that? Now, where I'm going. Twitter's rules do not uphold that ideology. And that is something liberals, okay? Futurama, it's just a TV show that's for the mainstream America. Mainstream America respects the idea that you can say dumb things we disagree with, things that make us angry. Oh, plain and simple. Twitter doesn't. More importantly, Twitter bans misgendering and dead naming. That is also a left ideological intersectional stance. That's not even a left stance. Like, okay, listen. Radical feminists like Meghan Murphy. She's a radical feminist. I think you'd put her on the left. I mean, I don't know what her personal politics are. Maybe she's a right-wing feminist, but the assumption would be that, if she's a feminist, she's on the left. However, she doesn't agree with the trans rights, activism and the things they're pushing. So you can't call her right-wing. There we can see that Twitter puts rules in place that are not just specific to the left, but specific to intersectional ideology. That's their core bias. So to act like they don't let political ideologies influence its policies, are you nuts? Your rules are literally based on an ideology, and this is what worries me. One of the last things I said in the show is, look, the alt-right, the freaky white supremacist neo-Confederate types, they don't threaten me. They're gone. They've lost. They're not relevant, and no one likes them. Okay? But these people, they're running Twitter. They're in government. They're gaining power. And they're racist, and that worries me. But let's actually read the story, because I'm really good at just ranting. Twitter on Friday denied taking action on or shaping policies based on political ideology on accounts in India, one of the company's largest and fastest growing markets, after nationalist right-wing users in the country accused it of being biased against them. You know what we're going to do here? We're going to use the Bill Cosby method. At a certain point, people said, well, if Bill Cosby's been accused this many times, it must be true. How many times has Twitter been accused? In America, in the UK, and now in India. If it walks like a duck, if it sounds like a duck, it might just be a duck. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. It could be a dude in a duck suit honking a duck horn. I can respect that, but listen. At this point, I think it's fair to say Twitter clearly has a bias. They really, really do. But I think we've got some. I think interesting things are happening. You know, with Jack Dorsey going on Joe's podcast, everyone getting kind of upset about not being challenged enough, and then essentially I come on and talk about it. I know Sam Harris talked about it. Maybe the conversation is going to start happening. They say, whether it's trends, how we enforce our policies, or the content that appears in your timeline, we believe in impartiality and do not take any actions based upon political viewpoints, wrote Colin Crowell, Twitter's Vice President of Global Public Policy, in a blog post published by the company. Our product and policies are never deployed nor evolved on the basis of political ideology. Mind-blowingly false. Mind-blowingly false. Just absolutely ridiculous. Okay, if that's the case, you should remove any rule that isn't rooted in law. You know, it's something that I think is really important that should be reiterated too. And this is for people. I mean, I encourage everybody to watch the podcast we did. It's three hours long. I think it's like almost a little bit more than 3 hours long. But there are people who kill other people and go to prison. And 20 years later, 25 years later, they get out. They get to come back into society. Now, there's a lot of things they can't do. They can't vote, although I think in Florida now they can. I think it's right to allow people to rehabilitate and get a path to redemption, but they can come out, they can start working again. Life is still hard, but we allow them back into our society even after killing someone. Twitter enforces rules, literally hate speech, ideological, misgendering, dead naming, ideological. Literally nothing, there's no law, it's not rooted in law. It's not. Although I will say the laws are starting to emerge, and in some instances, in public accommodation, you actually can't misgender people, which is, I don't know how you enforce that. There's speech, but it's, I guess, affecting businesses. The point is, Twitter's policies are based on an ideology. But I don't want to keep saying it. We'll just move on. Twitter's statement comes 3 days before its Indian executives are scheduled to appear before a 31-member parliamentary committee, which will also have representatives from India's Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. The committee will examine the issues of safeguarding citizens' right on social online news media platforms, according to a tweet from Chairman Anurag Thakur, who is a member of the, forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, Bharatiya Janata Party, India's ruling nationalist party. A Times of India reporter said that members of the committee would bring up allegations of political bias against Twitter in the meeting. Thakur did not respond to a request for comment from BuzzFeed News. India, which is a population of 1.3 billion, will head into major national elections sometime in the next few months that will determine whether Narendra Modi, the country's Hindu nationalist prime minister, remains in power. Intense political polarization has taken off on social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook during Modi's reign, which began in 2014. Right-wing Indians have claimed that Twitter artificially throttles the reach of their accounts, a practice known as shadow banning, which they have literally done in the US, arbitrarily bans or suspends accounts that support the Indian government, reduces follower counts, takes off right-wing topics from its trending section, and deliberately displays their tweets in lower in people's timelines. All of these accusations from Americans leveled at Twitter as well. I think people misunderstand, and I will say something that wasn't brought up in the podcast that is also extremely important. Sometimes people get banned for things they do behind the scenes. I happen to have personal, first-hand knowledge of groups of high-profile individuals who are very likely breaking the rules in their direct messages. So I don't know if Twitter, none of these people have been banned, but so I guess Twitter doesn't enforce direct messages the same way. They're considered private, so I guess that's, acceptable. But there's also things to consider, like people operating multiple accounts, using sock puppets on their own, and Twitter is able to track those. So sometimes, you'll see someone get banned, and maybe this is the fault of Twitter for not explaining why someone was banned. But I think it's fair to point out, sometimes we see someone get banned, we don't know why we get angry about it, we assume bias. There is a potential that it really is they've done something wrong on a different account, they've done something wrong and multiple accounts got banned, or they're breaking the rules behind the scenes. And for the most part, I think that's not that likely. I want to point it out. That doesn't change the fact that Kathy Griffin can, call on all of her millions of followers to dox some kids. It doesn't change the fact that the guy who told his followers to literally kill the Covington kids he's still active on Twitter. It doesn't change those things. We know Twitter is biased, plain and simple. But, you know, to act like... It's amazing to me how, for one, they can just keep saying over and over again, keep repeating the lie until it becomes true. Oh, we're not biased. Listen, when you've got various groups in the U.S. accusing you of bias, when you've admitted accidents, like, oops, we accidentally shadow banned the RNC spokeswoman, we're going to be like, here's what I say, how many coincidences does it have to be until you've won the lottery, right? I'm no conspiracy theorist, but I certainly believe that there's a certain point where you're going to be like, I don't think this is a coincidence, right? Twitter, your rules are based on an ideology. Plain and simple, we can see it. You're kind of mostly banning certain people and not banning others who do worse things. And now we have another country accusing you of doing the same thing. I'm gonna have to say, if it walks like a duck, if it sounds like a duck, probably not a guy in a duck suit honking a duck horn. Probably you being biased. So, ultimately, they're gonna keep saying it. Look at this. Wow, they've got, what is this? Protest against Twitter. Wow. I can't stress enough how truly important Twitter has become. And I think people need to realize this. Around the world, it's being used to share ideas, to engage in public discourse. Banning Alex Jones, banning Milo, we're exiling people from public discourse. And then we get all these, you know, it blows my mind when people I used to trust and respect on the left who fought for free speech and free expression on the internet are saying things like, well, we're not violating their free speech. Freepress.net's a nonprofit calling for the banning of Alex Jones blew my mind. An organization for years that championed the right of individuals to speak their minds online and to stop corporations from controlling speech, now advocating for massive control of speech by corporations. How does that happen? I personally feel betrayed. But you know what? We'll end it here. You can follow me on Minds at minds.com/Timcast. I'm going to have a lot more videos coming up, so stick around, and I'll see you on either any one of my channels. I've got a couple channels, youtube.com/Timcast and youtube.com/TimcastNews. Thanks for hanging out. I'm going to get on a plane in a few hours, and then back to normal scheduling starting tomorrow.